Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Ashish Sahejpal, Assistant Professor from University Business School, Punjab University Research Center, Ludhiana, Punjab. Today we are going to discuss about a module on strategic control under paper strategic management. After completing this module, you will be able to understand the nature and importance of strategic evaluation and control, the barriers in the path of strategic control process, the types of strategic control, and the methods of control. Strategic control is the terminal part of strategic management process. The control function holds its own importance in the process of strategic management. It is necessary, however, to introduce the process of strategic evaluation and control at the early stages of implementation so as to take timely corrective measures if required for achieving the desired goals and objectives of the corporation. The process of control is crucial as the internal and external factors of business environment may not follow the trends as anticipated at time of planning the strategy. For example, in 2010, Airtel, as part of international expansion strategy, acquired the African operation of Kuwait-based mobile telecommunication company referred to as Zen Group. At that time, the business in India was tough. About 14 operators were competing in a strictly regulated environment that lowered the profit margins in the industry. Anticipating that Africa had almost everything similar to India, Airtel exported its high volume, low cost business model to Africa, where operators used a fixed cost, high tariff approach so as to rewrite its success story in the African market. No doubt that the combined African population was 10 times that of the India's population, had a telecom penetration of 40% that was increasing at a good rate and had far more spectrum available, but Airtel could not gain a strong holding in Africa as planned. The falling African currency, the low average revenue per user, high cost structure coupled with high debt burden back home for the acquisition of Zen Group led to more troubles than achievement for Airtel. Meanwhile, the Indian telecom industry started to grow. There were signs of growth with the launch of 3G and 4G services, leading to a steady rise in data revenue, giving Airtel an opportunity for growth back home. Therefore, Airtel has to adopt a control system to generate revenue from its African operations and make it profitable. This would include a new network partners, information technology hardwares and software partners, new network design, among others, or the company may have to exit from not so promising African countries to remain focused on markets like Kenya and Nigeria that hold high potential in the future. Largest ever telecom takeover by an Indian firm of Kuwait-based Zen Telecom to buy its African business for $10.7 billion. Firing up Bharti's global ambition, the acquisition came in backdrop of diminishing revenue from its Indian operations due to hyper competition and rock bottom profits.
Strategic control process. Strategic control process is the course of action for determining what is being accomplished and enabling the manager to take a corrective measure in case of any failure or deviation so that the performance remains on the path of progress. Thus, strategic control engulfs the evaluation and is perpetual rather than periodical in nature. according to P. Drucker, strategic control maintains equilibrium between ends and means, output and efforts. The strategic control process consists of three phases: evaluation, criteria, performance evaluation, and feedback. The first phase, that is evaluation criteria, can be done both quantitatively as well as qualitatively. The quantitative criteria of evaluation lays stress on the data, which is a post facto analysis for the performance evaluation, where the actual results are compared with the expected results. If there happen to be a significant variation in the performance, the corrective measures are taken to meet the set objectives, while the qualitative evaluation and control of strategy is a real-time process where the performance is monitored and midway correction actions are taken.
It is worth noting that if undesired performance results from inappropriate use of strategic management process, operational manager must know about it so that they can correct the employee's activities. While if the undesired performance results are the outcome of the processes themselves, then both the top management and the operational managers must know about it so that midway corrections are taken or they could develop new implementation programs. Now we'll be focusing on the barriers to evaluation and control. The process of strategic evaluation and control is not that simple and plain. Therefore, there falls certain hurdles or barriers in the path of strategic evaluation and control that are discussed as below. The first is the resistance to evaluation. Any change in the business processes or activities may perhaps invite resistance from different quarters within an organization. Whenever a strategy is formulated and implemented, certain quarters, like employees or strategic business units, may develop a resistance for the same. This resistance is generally because measurement of performance in strategic formulation and implementation is always perceived as one's own performance by an individual or group of individuals involved in these activities or the processes. It is interesting to note that the evaluation of strategy is not distinguished from the evaluation of an individual or the groups of individuals involved in the implementation of strategy. Therefore, it is important to understand that the evaluation of strategy is to ascertain whether the strategy formulated is moving in the right direction or not, rather than the individual employee's contribution towards strategic implementation. The next is the short-term orientation. A strategy followed by an organization comprises of two different targets, that is short-term and long-term. If the corporation short-term target does not coincide with that of the long-term strategy target, the corporation may start giving importance to the short-term targets, overlooking the long-term objectives, so that compliance is made in the short run. This misalignment of short-term objectives may lead to shortfall in implementing the strategy and resulting to variation in the strategy evaluation. Therefore, the short-termism approach has to be avoided for successful strategic control in the process of strategic management.
The limits of control. What should be the upper and low limit of control? This remains a general dilemma of any control system. Though it is not impossible, but it is the toughest task undertaken by the strategist to determine the upper and lower limit of control. Imposing excessive control may lead to negative effects on the performance of the employees in the organization. As a result, the employees may not use the best of their potential and may lack creativity. On the contrary, too less a control Two, makes the employees non-serious about their performance, thus making the process of evaluation and control ineffective and sometimes redundant. In order to overcome the above mentioned barriers to evaluation and control, the organization have to make its people believe in its objectives at the very first step. The strategic intent of the organization has to be well communicated across all levels within the organization and its stakeholders outside the organization. Moreover, the best way to eliminate or reduce the impact of barriers to evaluation and control is to change the attitude of people, that is, to limit the problem by increasing the perception of problems. Titan Edge is a perfect example that how the company made its team believe that they could design the world's slimmest watch back in 2002. The catchphrase of "we will do what the Swiss cannot" kept the people at Titan going, and the world's slimmest watch was born. It was the first time ever that an Indian watch company pushed the boundaries to design and manufacture indigenously the slimmest watch, thereby gaining an entry into Guinness Book of World Record. 10 years later, the new generation Edge 2012 was lighter than ever before at 36 grams. By using a skeletal structure in cases in titanium, a new edge material used in aircrafts and spacecraft. The new Edge was the slimmest and the lightest watch in the universe. Its form and proportions are very contemporary. The watches have sapphire crest top and bottom, unique construction, houses, 1.15 mm movement between two layers of sapphire, which reduces overall thickness of the watch to 4 mm only. Types of strategic control. There are 4 types of strategic control that are discussed as below: premise control, implementation control, strategic surveillance control, and special alert control. Premise control. Business strategy is based on the assumption that how things will occur in the future. Premise control allows the top management of the corporation to examine whether this assumption will continue to hold true with the implementation of the strategy or not. Therefore, premise control helps the management to take corrective actions at the appropriate time and discontinues the original strategy that was based on invalid assumption. These pre-assumptions may relate to the changing government policies, environmental factors such as inflation, interest rates, and social changes, or by industry factors such as competitor, suppliers, and barrier to entry. For example, Titan Company Limited, formerly known as Titan Industries Limited, had a successful jewelry purchase scheme named as Tanish Golden Harvest Scheme. This scheme helped the company to boost its sale in times when the prices of gold was on rise. Under this scheme, the consumer were allowed to make 11 equal monthly payments towards the purchase of jewelry, where the final and 12th installment was being made by the company itself. With the total accumulated amount, the consumer was finally allowed to make purchase of the jewelry post 12 months. This scheme was convenient for the consumer for making purchase of gold jewelry as it was based on systematic investment and gave a run to other financial products in the market as far as returns were concerned. However, with the newly enacted Companies Act, which became a law on 1st April 2014, certain new rules were introduced, especially under explanation of Section 21B of the Companies Acceptance of Deposit Rules 2014, which appeared to bring such scheme also under the definition of public deposits. TCL was now constrained to compile with this new law immediately and was required to wind off the levels of deposits, as these were termed now in its current form. This meant that TCL was constrained to stop accepting any further installments from the existing account holder also. Tanish later revised its Golden Harvest scheme, which was discontinued earlier because of the new Companies Act. The new act put a limit onto the return offered by the company to deposit holder to 12% and capped the total amount of deposit to 25% of their net worth. The revised scheme now compiled with the new law. Implementation control. Once a strategy is formulated, it has to be implemented. As the manager takes the necessary steps to put the strategy in action, implementation control is used to review whether the original plan, programs, and projects are being well implemented and the corporation is glided through its predetermined objectives or not. Milestone review is another tool used in for implementation control. The milestone review allows the manager to determine the critical points in strategic implementation in terms of event, resources, or even time. Exhibit 1 showcases an email to the Airtel customer from CEO Bharti Airtel Limited, where an attempt is being made by the company to provide the best network through its initiative, Open Network. Through this initiative, the company provides its network information to its customer so that they could tell Airtel where the gaps are. This would help the company to improve its coverage and provide an experience like no other in the industry. The company acknowledges that there's a coverage holes in India and are still a challenge. At some location, the company needs to install new towers, while at some other, towers have forcibly been shut down. Such implementation control will help company like Airtel to optimally utilize its infrastructure and achieve its objective of being the best network service provider in India. Strategic surveillance control. Premise control and implementation control are looked upon as more specific by nature, whereas surveillance control is more generalized and overarching control. A company has to protect its business from the external threats that may hinder the success of the strategy implemented. Strategic surveillance control allows the management to monitor multiple sources for these threats. The manager may safeguard the strategy by continually upgrading themselves about industry-specific information through trade journals and magazines, attending trade conferences, etc. Special alert control. This control is based on the trigger mechanism designed to enable rapid response to any unexpected or sudden events that may pose threat to the strategy implemented. Such a control is based on the immediate reassessment of the strategy formulated in a given contingency. For example, the country's largest commercial vehicle manufacturer, Tata Motor, have to shut down the production of its truck for the fourth time in 2013 as it struggled because of falling retail demand. The company had done it to avoid piling up of inventory with the dealers. The 3-day block closure was planned to ensure alignment of production with demand so as to bring the cost under control that would have been elevated because of piling of inventory and to maintain the health of the ecosystem. Methods of control. There are various methods, tools, techniques used in strategic control system. These methods are adopted by the organization based on types of control required. No doubt, most of these methods are related to financial control and neglect the non-financial parameters. The financial reporting system provides the information of how a company has performed in the past, but offer little information about how it might perform in the future. Some of these methods are discussed briefly in the following section of the module so as to develop a basic understanding of various control methods. Budgets and budgetary control. Budgeting has been accepted as one of the efficient method of short-term planning and control, though it is employed in large business organizations, but small businesses are also using it at least in some informal manner. Budget is defined as a financial and or quantitative statement prepared and approved prior to defined period of time of the policy to be pursued during that period for the purpose of attaining a given objective by the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, England. Therefore, a budget is taken as a document that usually deals the allocation of resources to different units with the organization and is classified under the three different modes. First is time, annual budgets, quarterly budgets, monthly budgets, zero-based budgets, etc. Second is on the basis of functionality, human resource, materials, marketing, sales, research and development, administration, etc. And last is flexibility to evaluate the performance at different volume levels or capacity utilization, sensitivity to key parameters, etc. Further, the budgetary control is the process of establishment of budgets relating to various activities and comparing the actual performance with the budgeted figures for calculating the deviation, if any. It is to be noted that budgetary control is not possible without budgets.
Dear students, now we'll be focusing on ratio analysis as a method of control. Ratio analysis is a form of financial statement analysis used to obtain a quick snapshot of firm's performance in various key areas. It is used to measure the company's operating and financial performances such as efficiency, liquidity, solvency, and profitability. The trends of various ratios is studied over a period of time to check whether the strategy pursued so far is proceeding in the right direction or not. Quantifying the 5 C's, that is character, capacity, capital, collateral, and condition, is a step forward in the process of strategic evaluation and control. These 5 parameters are discussed in brief as follows. The first is character. It represents the firm's moral and ethical approach towards its stakeholder, especially creditors. Firm's repayment performance on past and current debts is considered as a measure to check this parameter. The next is capacity. It refers to the company's capability to maintain both profitability and solvency. Measures such as historic and present adequacy of working capital, income statement, showcasing a history of good profit margins, analysis of income and expenses, and a realistic evaluation of current income generating capacity are important in evaluating these factors. Capital. Capital is the long-term borrowing, shareholders' funds, and working capital borrowings, and collectively represents the wealth of the business. The relevant ratios that determine the health of the company are liquidity ratio, the current ratio, solvency ratio, debt to equity ratio, and debt to asset ratio. Thereafter, the next C is the collateral. The growth strategy is the most popular strategy which an organization could adopt. The companies that do business in a growing industry must expand to survive, for which monetary resources are absolutely necessary. For raising the required capital, the companies negotiate for long and short-term borrowing from the current and prospective shareholders. In such a situation, the collateral becomes the essential requisite, and the extent of collateral therefore reflects the firm's capacity for borrowing. Net realization value, that is NRV, is an important measure to check the collateral parameter. Then the last, what we talk about, the conditions. Every industry undergoes a business cycle which includes a recession, depression, recovery, and boom. These cycles affect the financial standing of the company. The performance of the corporation during these periods calls for the appropriateness of strategy being implemented and taking any mid-course correction for the strategy employed.
Audits. Audit is another method of control. An audit is the process by which the financial statement of an organization are evaluated so as to ensure that these are accurate representation of transactions the business claims for. The audits can be done both internally and externally. Internal audits are done by employees of the organization, while external audits are conducted by independent agencies outside the firm. Time-related control methods. Critical path method, CPM, and program evaluation and review technique, that is PERT, are the most popular graphical analytical methods used in strategic control process. These tools help the management to take remedial actions and get the project back on course. The techniques take recognition of three factors that influence successful achievement of program objectives, that is time, resource, and technical performance specifications.
Okay, friends, it's time to summarize our module. A well thought strategy is of no purpose till its objectives are achieved as intended. Therefore, strategy formulation and implementation should be followed by strategic evaluation and control. It henceforth becomes important to know whether the strategic implemented has been assiduously following the intent and adhering to the time frame that was originally proposed. It is also important to note that strategic control engulfs the evaluation and is perpetual rather than periodical in nature. The phase of evaluation includes understanding the influence of internal and external environmental factors on the strategy during the time horizon of its implementation. This evaluation has to be supported by a proper control system so as to provide necessary mid-course correction or modification of the strategy employed. Moreover, it becomes imperative for the managers to understand the barriers in the path of strategic evaluation and control, and overcoming these hurdles would help accomplishing the targeted strategy. Further, the strategic control can be classified under four heads, that is the premise control, the implementation control, the strategic surveillance control, and special control, the special alert control. There are various methods and tools of control used in strategic control system. These methods are adopted by organization based on types of controls required. Budgets and budgetary controls, along with ratio analysis, audits, and time-related control techniques are well-suited method for strategic control. Thank you.